A huge round of applause for this legacy of 190 years, the Bombay Chamber. I know we are all excited and looking forward to the great unveil of the playbook. But before that, we thought it would be useful to do something very human, have a discussion about it. After all, AI can write reports, analyze markets, and even draft speeches. But when it comes to arguing about strategy, debating ideas, and occasionally disagreeing with great confidence, humans still do it best. So, we have brought together a distinguished panel of leaders who are not just talking about AI, but actually building AI-driven enterprises. Think of this panel as a live version of the playbook, the ideas, experiences, and lessons that sit behind the pages we are about to launch soon. To moderate the conversation, I now invite on the dais my former colleague and editor of Express Computer, the flagship technology publication from the Indian Express Group, Srikanth RP. A huge round of applause for this seasoned IT journalist. And joining him on the panel are our esteemed CEOs who absolutely don't need any introductions. Ms. Girija Subramanian, Chairman cum Managing Director, the New India Assurance Company Limited, and Board Member, Bombay Chamber. A huge round of applause for her. Dr. Indu Shani, Founding President and Chancellor, Atlas Skilltech University, and former Sheriff of Mumbai 2008 and 2009. Mr. A.S. Lakshmi Narayanan, MD and CEO, Tata Communications, and Mr. Sharad Mahendra, Joint Managing Director and CEO, JSW Energy Limited. A huge round of applause for our esteemed CEOs. And over to you, Srikanth.
So like Stina mentioned, there's a live playbook, I could say, we could hear firsthand on what the CEOs think about AI. So a lot of talk has been done about AI, but probably we'll get to hear from our esteemed panelists, and probably we have the right mix of, from a gender perspective, 50-50% split. So I think it's good to hear, So let me start with a statistic which I got from E&Y. So AI potentially could add about 550 billion to 607 billion to India's economy by 2035. Now, there are new growth models which are being powered by AI, but there are also a lot of questions. How should capital be allocated? So should AI be treated like any other technology, or should AI mandate a different, because it's more strategic? ROI may not be immediate, but probably the CEOs know it best. More importantly, how should AI be used responsibly? So these are some of the questions that we'll try to explore. So let me start with Ms. Girija Subramanian first. Ma'am, if I can hear from you on what's your perspective about AI and how are you using AI in your own organization?
So AI you can say it's a reality. It's already there and it's being used, phenomenally even now. And I see a future where most of our routine operations are going to be taken over by AI. Maybe most of our strategic decision making will also be taken over by AI. And therefore, I think it's something that we need to adapt. We need to, see that we have a long-term relationship with AI, and our boardroom discussions should center around how do we, allocate capital for a long-term sustainability perspective where AI is concerned.
Okay. Any use cases would you like to mention, ma'am, where you're using AI today?
Yeah, we are using AI extensively in claims processing, in certain simple products right now. In order to go ahead and make this, more sustainable and complex claims analysis, this is still in the research stage, because we'll have to use it very responsibly where big amounts are concerned, and therefore that will take some time. But I'm very sure that a lot of standardization is happening as we speak, and we will have a day very soon where most claims would be automated.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Sindhu, if I can have your perspective.
Good evening, and I would like to say that technology has always been a very interesting aspect of education. I'm talking about the general education across schools and colleges. I'm going to give you just two examples here to show you how technology has hit education. The first one is the year 2000, when I became a principal of Bombay University's leading college, HR college, and we were given, the university allowed, because it was the millennial year, the university allowed us to have computers, and so we had computers, and of course there was the www, so emails were allowed, and I got my principal's email officially from the university. However, within a week, my email was hacked. And hacked by whom? A student. Right? Now what do? Everybody said, rusticate the student. I said, no, I want to make him my assistant. Because if he has been able to do this, which means he knows more of technology than me. Today, for us in education, when we were setting up Atlas Skilltech University, which we've set up in 2021, Maharashtra's private state university, we said we don't want to call it a normal university, we want to call it a skill tech university. We became India's first skill tech university, where I think the university was born with AI. And one of the points before you go to the next is, this is something I found today while I was coming in. How are we using tech? I mean, do we have a choice today to say that we are not going to use AI in education? Look at this. There's an exam going on. This is examination time. Exam going on. I love the way how my professor has set the question paper, but and everything is available. They are on laptops, Wi-Fi is available, the whole world is available to them, and to tell these students don't use AI is going to be not possible. So it's the instructions you put. At the top of the examination, read these 3 lines. 1, think first, AI second. So don't give up on your thinking. 2nd, use AI as a coach and not a cheerleader. All right? And the 3rd, engineer productive friction. Because he would have been taught something and AI is going to tell him something else. How is he going to engineer productive friction? These are the instructions given to the student, which means he can use AI in an examination. Thank you.
Okay, just one follow-up question, ma'am. What's changed in your organization because of this? What is the impact, like the 3 lines you mentioned? What is the impact?
It's a fantastic impact because the students, how are you going to stop them from using AI? You just tell me. They've got their phones, they've got their laptops, they've got the Wi-Fi, unless I disable the Wi-Fi, which then, how do the professors act then? So the impact has been amazing. Today, AI at Atlas is not a separate subject. It is integrated in everything we teach.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lakshminarayanan, if I can have your view, because you have a ringside view, I would say, using AI internally also, I believe, also with the various industries that you partner with. So can I have your perspective on some use cases internally that you're using and also the broader impact on the industry?
I think I agree with all the comments. AI is a very, very transformative technology. I think it's a generational one. And I've made statements internally and in public that what companies do in the next 5 years will determine their fate for the next 50 years. So internally, and the reason I'm saying that is, we have seen the previous technology waves, and I've been now 43 years plus in the tech industry. I've seen many of the technology waves coming through. But what is fundamentally different in the AI is that like what internet did with mobile and internet coming together, there were new business models that came about. today we are focused more on AI to automate things. How can I automate this task and automate that task and how? But AI is capable of disrupting business models. How, especially with agentic AI, where the whole orchestration within the company, as well as orchestration across the company's agentic AI will be able to do it at scale and much faster speed. So it has the power of that. So which is why I say that how companies prepare themselves over the next 5 years is going to have an impact for the next 50 years in how they perform. And therefore, we have been on this journey internally to prepare. 5 years ago, when we launched our strategy, we said AI is going to be fundamental. Even 5 years ago, now in the last 3 years, it's accelerated a lot more. But what I see differently is with the transformer models, the GPT models that come, the AI is really accelerated. And we see, we set up an AI center of excellence like many other companies did. We did a number of projects, but I didn't find them scaling very much. Every time we give them a problem, they will solve the problem. It is as though they are building a new building, right? So they'll dig up the foundation, erect the walls, and paint everything. We ask them to change something, then once again the foundation will get built up. So that is when the realization dawned on us that AI requires a different approach altogether, and I call that an AI operating system, because to scale AI within the enterprise, you can't be approaching them project by project, and you need a platform and a more systemic approach. So having said that, to come to your question, we are doing some of them on that, and I'm very passionate about that. I'll talk more about it. But inside the company, we have devised an AI maturity model. It's in the early stages. About a year ago, we launched, essentially to look at where individual business units, even functional units like a HR or a finance or any of them, we are assessing them or asking them to assess themselves on 2 dimensions. Right? One dimension is on the capability front, because AI also, there is a mindset change. There's a cultural change that is required to accept AI and implement. So there is a set of capabilities you need to develop. People have to be educated on AI, how to use AI and all of that stuff. So that's on the capability, and we have built a questionnaire on how to assess yourself. The second dimension we looked at is what is the impact. So impact on both on efficiencies that you bring within the company in terms of savings and whichever way you want to measure. And the second is about the revenue and the customer impact you're making. So these are the impact dimensions. And across these 2 dimensions, this questionnaire is administered, and people would evaluate themselves as to where they are. And some units have been more generous about it themselves, but we said we don't care. You evaluate yourself where you are today. If you think you are here today, you plot where you're going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now. How is your journey going to be, and what are you going to do? So that is one thing that we are doing, and I think that is creating a lot of competition inside, and also creating a lot of awareness inside the company as to what they should do. And moreover, we just invested in a startup company called Commotion, which is a very AI native company. And if I if I asked those guys something, within 3 days they'll come back to me with a demonstration. So the same thing I tell the internal team, they'll take 3 weeks is a generous time. It takes a long time to come back. So the AI talent, I find, is inherently very different as well. So we need to put some of these at competitions. So inside the company, that is one set of things that we're doing to say, how do you transform the organization to become AI first, and what does AI first mean? We are defining that. We are measuring for each of the units where they are in this quadrant and where they need to go. Having done that, there's a lot of projects that we are running to see, in AI operations, for example. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is in HR. So what we have done is, we have asked our HR team to create, we have all job descriptions today. So we are creating what is called as a North Star job descriptions. As to if you take a role today, how will you define this role 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when you start using AI, how will the job description change? And that is something that we are defining. And once that is defined, then we know the gap between here to there. So we are giving that job description to people who are currently doing the roles and say, how do you equip yourself to get there? And we are aligning our learning systems and other things for them to get there. So there we are going to be using AI to see what I have to do. If I have to acquire those skills, I will have an AI assistant for me to see what I am doing, and it will suggest me the courses, the learnings that I have to do in order to get there, to prepare myself for the future, for the job descriptions. Operations area, we have used AI extensively. We are in the journey, start of the journey, especially with agentic AI in our network operations and fairly complex things. As I said, more orchestrating between many things as opposed to individual task automation. That we are in the, we started about a year ago at scale, and we are nearly there with our first phase where we are able to see the benefits of it. And lastly, how do we embed AI into our own products? And I can talk more about it because that's a lot of work.
Okay, my first question is the North Star AI defined? Is it generated by AI?
North Star AI?
North Star, you said, no? The capabilities which will happen.
Yeah.
So is that generated by AI or is it human driven?
No, that, as I said, we certainly believe that AI must be used with human in the loop. I think, trust was mentioned earlier, and we have points of view on trust. How do you develop AI strategies within the organization so that you can trust the AI? Because today with generative AI, it still hallucinates.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, especially in the customer-facing things, that if you have to do something, it's very easy to break the trust. You can't go and tell the customer that my mortgage application was rejected because my AI asked you to reject it, right? So those things would damage the trust of the. So how do you build that something that? So to answer your question, I think human in the loop is important. So that is why we are trying to prepare our people to say, you reimagine as to how the role will look like. And how are you going to prepare yourself for coming there?
Yeah, that has big implications for, I think, every industry, what you just said. Because if you measure, it's like the as is to the to be state, which is part of every software cycle. Now I come to Mr. Sharad Mahendra. I think very, very important role today from an energy perspective, because, all of us are talking about energy glut and, huge significance from, do you see AI, firstly, if I can ask you from your own perspective, and how do you see technologies like AI playing a role in volatile environments like this?
Thank you. Maybe before I start to the question, in continuation to what Mr. Lakshminarayan was saying, I'd just like to add one point. It was very important what he rightly said, the AI and also the human aspect, like using this thing. But what I feel is what I understand AI as, that there are unlimited data which exist. It is that those data points which are being used and coming to and guiding us or telling us what is right to do. But I feel that going forward, it is AI. This was asked by someone else also just very recently, that what will happen, that is everything will be done by AI. I fully agree. In different words, I say, it is the HI also which is going to play a very, very important role, human intelligence, which is going to use the AI to the benefit in a positive way, that's what I feel. So human aspect and the human intelligence will continue to be the prime mover of using AI, is what I take this as an opportunity. Now coming to what you asked me as a power producer, I will say that I am one of the luckiest to be on this seat when taking care of the energy business of JSW, is that AI is extremely important. I feel is more important to many of, like as was said by Mr. Lakshminarayan also, like we understand the importance of us as an organization to this industry, AI, because reliable energy is the most important raw material for AI. Consistency, reliable energy. So because it's an energy intensive sector. it consumes, just maybe most of you will be aware that as compared to a data center, the AI centers which are coming are 3 to 4 times for the same capacity of data center getting converted into AI center, the power requirement goes by 3 to 4 times. That is the importance of power, on which maybe I'll just give a few examples. But also, as an organization, now we realize last few years when AI started coming in that we have been doing certain things, but in pockets. I'll just give you an example that this is ours, is that we have to set up capacities, whether we are setting up large capacities in hydropower, in wind, solar, RE, or in the thermal fossil also. So much of work is going on at maybe 30, at times when I see, I also get that at 35 locations across the country, the project work is going on. How to see, that is where the AI. Now then AI is something I can see the progress of the project. Progress is not only physical terms, how much portion of the work has done, there are some cost targets also, budgets also. So we have used AI integrating what is happening in the field with our SAP, telling us what is the budget, what is there, what is going wrong, and also with some tools using and integrating. This AI is telling us maybe what can at level 3, level 4 also, maybe 3 months, 4 months, 6 months also, we get the indication where the things can go wrong and what needs to be done. So this has become an integral part, not only this, from people aspect also, because it's a people-intensive industry when the projects are going on, work is going on. So it is very important to take care of the people aspect also. About a year back, we launched AI-enabled feature for all 100% of our employees. At times they may like to interact with me, but I am not available. Not very easy for everyone to interact with. So what they do is AI-enabled, we have named it as Amber. They just go on their phone, on WhatsApp, and they just put this thing, Amber not replies. They collects the information, whatever it is coming in, and it gives the analysis to me. That this is something in the organization, this trend is happening. This was one small example. So there are many such examples wherein this has become a major part of our working. But yes, lot needs to be done still. It is just a start of the journey.
So just one question, have project efficiencies improved a lot because of AI?
Yes, extremely, extremely. Okay. It is not only the projects, definitely the actions, timely actions, this enabled us to act timely if something more to be done or something differently to be done. Apart from that, we have a very large platform operating capacities across all segments is spread. So there also AI is, we are using, we have a control center of all my operations. Like, as I told you, more than 25 locations across the country where it is operating. I can see we have a big control room. We have just set up. It has, fortunately, it has started just few weeks back only. All the projects live performance is there. And also projects are also visible. And also there is indication which comes on the basis of the past performance data that what is going wrong, more in terms of the predictive maintenance, so that we are able to, it prevents me loss of revenue by acting timely beforehand only, and definitely it is making a significant difference in our working.
Wonderful. I think very good start to the panel, I would say. My next question, which is probably going to be very important. What are some of the revenue opportunities that you see? Have revenue opportunities increased because of AI? And if yes, what are they? I mean, if I can start with you again.
Yeah, actually at New India Assurance, we are a 107-year-old company, and the data systems and all have legacy. So basically we are now for the last 2 years trying to transition into modern data systems where we can actually capture, have modular systems in place which will help us to become more AI enabled. So right now the journey is trying to change the core and see that we adapt faster to AI. So right now we've not had any great investment in AI that will bring in revenues to that extent. So we're still experimenting.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Sindhu?
I think the way you can measure revenue in university is very different from the way you measure revenue in the industrial and in companies and in industry. the most important thing is that the student satisfaction has gone up 100% because we have integrated AI into everything that we are doing. We have 4 schools. We have the School of Management, the School of Design, the School of Technology, and Law. Now, integrating it in all across, not just integrating it into the schools, but integrating it across all the subjects has been the most interesting. And, revenues as far as I would say for us is that job satisfaction for our students. We are actually producing these students for you. And so we are happy to see that we have a lot of industry. And one of these things we did strategically, I must tell you. When we were setting up the university, they asked us, where is your land? So I asked the minister that you tell me out of the 33 million gods in India, which one will give me land in the center of Mumbai? Because I want to be a campus within corporates. What am I going to be teaching my students if the corporates don't tell me what I should be doing? And so we got into BKC, the center of Mumbai, and today I can tell you that we attract a large number of very interested students, and student satisfaction has gone in, student involvement has gone in. Course, again, let me tell you one thing. Today, if I am setting the curriculum for my first year students, promise me that 4 years later, the jobs are going to remain the same. No industry is promising me that, right? So jobs are changing. How do I educate my students? And therefore, skilling and reskilling is something we do.
Fantastic. Mr. Lakshman?
So from a revenue standpoint, we have 2 categories of products or platforms. So one is the company that we invested called Commotion. We are tightly integrating with our what we call as a customer interaction system. So the entire AI operating system, how do we deliver better journeys for customers? How do you both inbound, outbound calls with voice AI and all of that? There we are seeing fantastic traction. And with that platform, we are not only able to show the customers that they can bring efficiencies with their own workforce, whether contact centers or others, but we are also able to demonstrate that with this platform, they can improve their own revenues and margins. There are a number of use cases that we are showing. So that is one dimension that we are attacking. The second is the digital infrastructure, because fundamentally, digital infrastructure is going to be extremely critical for AI. It's our view that even without AI, the digital infrastructure today in many organizations are very, very fragile. It's very, too many islands of infrastructure. You will have a Wi-Fi in a place like this, and you'll have a network, you'll have data in data centers, in cloud. And so the digital infrastructure is very fragmented, and managing this for a large enterprise has become very complex because each of these islands are different sets of OEMs are involved in that, and managing all of that is very complex. Now, on this fragility, if you add AI is going to multiply this fragility by 100 times. The data volumes are going to increase. For example, the voice AI, some of the implementations that we're doing, every voice AI is interacting with the end customer of our enterprise. One interaction is spawning off at least 10, 15 different calls within their enterprise, fetching data from their CRM systems or fetching data from their ERP systems and so on. So this traffic with voice AI is going to multiply many times. The second is AI is also going to expose the security vulnerabilities. We talked about hacking. It's going to be it's going to expose a lot more. So the digital infrastructure is something that people need to worry about. And today, I don't think people are paying too much attention to that. I think that people have a foundation to have a bungalow, but they are dreaming about erecting a multi-story tower there for AI, which is not going to happen if they don't get the foundation right. So there we are ourselves strengthening the digital foundation, and we launched some set of products for AI, and we call it simply saying, how do you connect, how do you protect, and how do you govern in the world of AI? And we say that our digital infrastructure will help you to do these three things. So those are the two dimensions of revenue generating products and platforms that we are driving in the market.
Mr. Mahendra?
Yeah, I think from revenue, I'll say again that we are lucky in terms of using AI. Definitely we have seen building up and designing more efficient solutions. For better understanding, I'll just take half a minute to explain that there are, like everything what I say will be relate to the energy and power. Like if we compare a state of Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu with a state of Bihar, and they want now a green energy on a round-the-clock basis, every hour. Like, so what everyone, it's a competitive space, everyone comes and there is an online competitive bidding. So for that, it is a mix of setting up a wind plus solar capacity, wind capacity, and energy storage in terms of the battery energy storage. When there is no wind, there is no solar, or less wind, more solar, or no solar, less wind. But it is to be given hourly patterns. So what happens that everyone says, okay, I will put this much of wind, this much of solar, and so this is. What we do is, and I can proudly say that we were the first one to start this, that we using AI, and then understanding with the past data which the states helped. Because the power consumption pattern on an annual and hourly basis, if I compare with Maharashtra and Bihar, will be very different. Bihar, this is an industrial dominated economy. That is an agriculture dominated economy. Very different pattern of power. Power may be 100 megawatt for both, but hourly requirements are very different. So based on when they need what power, this AI helped us in designing a most cost-effective product. Rather than investing in setting up more of wind, which is more costly, more of solar, this much of battery energy storage, less of wind. So we have been successful in winning those bids and getting much better, higher returns as compared to what others would have been getting. This is one. Another is that, as I said, I was lucky is that the way this industry is growing, we are becoming an integral part of setting up capacities, power generating capacities to service to the AI customers who need the industries, who need the energy. So this is a critical part, and we have an AI council within our organization across the sector, across the departments, the leaders, because this we see as a future for us in bringing up being more efficient, and also servicing the AI industry. So this is going to be a major part in terms of our revenue generation going forward.
So you mentioned an interesting part about, because India is diverse as a country, and do you see this becoming a model for other companies also, customized plans across different parts of India, because India is a country of countries, like they say. So, do you see this as a template or a model for your company or other companies to?
Yes, it will. And this is one example which I have given. And across the industries, this is going to guide, this is going to give the right answers. That what is the best solution, what is in terms of revenue or profitability we are saying, most cost effective, most profitable, what is the best solution?
Now my next question, because there are also a lot of CIOs in the room, how do you decide capital allocation for AI? Because AI, I would believe, is not a normal technology like cloud or analytics, or because it's said to be a transformation technology. But we would like to hear from you as a CEO, from the lens of a CEO, how do you see AI, where the impact could be long-term rather than short-term? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically this is, as I told you, it's a long-term subject, and it requires sustained investment in people, in skill sets. So we need to provide capital from the perspective of how we wish to grow, how soon we wish to grow. And in the insurance sector, there is a national aspiration level of having insurance for all by 2047. We are leading that change for the government, and therefore we need to see that the penetration level, awareness, in all levels we go up. So that is possible only by use of AI, and therefore capital allocation for AI is a very serious matter which is discussed basis the roadmap we have going forward for the, as bigger the roadmap, bigger the achievement levels, and investment would be there in terms of creating more, talent within the organization, hiring new talent to help us to scale up the journey faster. Also see that we create the digital infrastructure that Mr. Lakshminarayan was talking about. We've also started that journey of changing the way we scaling up the digital infrastructure, the data governance part, trying to standardize data so that we are able to deep dive into the data and get better results. And this helps us in many, many ways, because helps us to, get insights into the data, which will also help us to, control frauds, to read patterns in our claim data, which help us to put in certain, rules to the game, so that we are able to see that there is no abuse of the system. So many things are there, and this involves a lot of investment into artificial intelligence and related entities. Partnership with all such, organizations that would give us this services is also part of it.
Very nice, ma'am. I think that would encourage a lot of players, I believe. Yeah. Yes, please.
When you talk about investment and you're talking about allocation and investment, I think first let's look at the broader picture. The country needs to do this investment. Otherwise, there's a digital divide. I'm talking only about education. I'm talking about, how it's important. 247 million students overnight went online when COVID hit, right? 247. And a lot of investment had to be done at that time to be able to get people, we had to give all the faculty, all the facilities if they are teaching, and so on and so forth. This was, if a private institution had to do so much, the government has to think of more and more allocation for the digital divide. This is, we are talking a completely different thing from the industry and from the private sectors. Secondly, as an institution by ourselves, we have been very fortunate that AI has, it depends on how and where does AI investment needed. The students all have it. They know it. They do it. All we have to do it to skill the faculty. And our investment has been mainly in skilling the faculty, in skilling the administrative systems, and in, of course, bringing in state-of-art infrastructure. If you get a smart board in class, which can be a computer, which you can work with a hand on it, you can actually save something, you can talk to that smart board in the class. Recently an exam was held. This is interesting. The faculty gave an exam to the students sitting to use that smart board and say, ask ChatGPT this particular aspect of your study, all right? A particular topic was taken. They went ahead and kept asking ChatGPT, all the students, 60 students in the class. They finished in an hour. Where is the evaluation? How do you test such students? You know how? The professor tested them on what prompt each student gave. Do you understand that? What is it that you are asking? How cleverly are you asking that you are getting this answer? And so the best answer came up. And so therefore, yes, allocation is required, but I'm talking about countrywide. I think to see that the digital divide is gone, the government must invest more.
Thank you. Yes.
So from an investment standpoint, since we turned profitable, which was about 3-4 years ago only, we have started allocating roughly about between 8 to 10% of our EBITDA for new product development and expansion investments. So it could be expansion on the network side, but also new products. So in the last 3 years, we've launched a lot of new products, many of them in anticipation for AI and preparing our enterprise customers for AI. So all of this put together, for the last 3-4 years, we've been investing about 8 to 10% of our EBITDA on new products, of which I would give a significant weightage on the AI. So for example, we entered into a partnership with NVIDIA and launched our own Vayu AI cloud. It runs in we were the first in India to put it in a liquid cooled environment to make it more energy friendly as well as operationally more efficient. So starting from there, at the infrastructure stage, to some of the new products, like I said, that we've launched now with an eye on how do you ensure sovereignty of data, how do you ensure, how can I geo-ring fence the data such that the data cannot go somewhere else, intentionally or unintentionally. How do you, the data today resides in multiple clouds. How do I connect all these clouds in the most efficient fashion? All of that is with AI intelligence. So with our platform, you just simply have to say, look, my application is running on this cloud. The data is somewhere else. The model is somewhere else. I need to connect these 3 clouds. Today, it is a very cumbersome job for somebody to connect all of these and make sure it works properly. With the new platforms that we've launched, you'll be able to do that in a jiffy. So some of these are the investments. But overall, the capital allocation we have done is fairly bold, where I said about between 8 to 10% of our EBITDA is going into all the new product and development. Some of them, we are already seeing the returns. Some of them, there is anticipation that there will be returns coming, but we are investing heavily.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Yeah, see, for us, if we see that in terms of definitely, as I have been saying, that this is a major focus area. Our budget allocation, it may sound maybe it's about 1% at the EBITDA level, but this is to build the entire infrastructure, because as we said that this is a business, I will say that this is an energy business wherein you invest in the 3:1 debt equity and you are getting the returns. We have to wait for the returns, 25 years cash flow business. So what we do is any project at any given time, about maybe 20 to 25 projects are always on stream. Each project, there is an allocation towards this AI, individually, integrating overall with the organization, but each project to build the infrastructure. So there is a large investment which is going on, and we know that without this it is not possible. It is just like a new city is getting built, and you say that how much you are allocating to the road. Without road, the city will not exist. So it is like that. This is our thought process of building revenue rather than just measuring the returns, ROI, only on the investment I am making on AI. I am not a IT company or the service company. We are hardcore manufacturing and a power developing organization. So for us to measure my investment or return on investment on AI is not the right approach, is what I feel.
I'll still like to begin from this side now. Again, I'll pose my question. What is the most surprising thing about AI's impact in your organization that you have discovered? Any one example, topmost?
See, the biggest surprise has been when I started seeing this is the acceptability. How fast it has been accepted is really a real surprise. Real surprise. And when it has been, at times there is some kind of communication also. Like I will give my own example. Till about, I will say 8-10 years back, If I am alone, my family is not there with me, and I have to eat, I used to take out car, go, even if I have to eat at home, I used to get it packed and come home. But last 6-7 years, I've been just using my mobile phone and ordering and whatever best I want from the best of the places. So this is all what usage of AI. So how easily I have accepted, there is a very clear linkage of the way we live. It is going to become a very normal thing. So the biggest surprise is that how it the speed at which this is getting adopted, and this is becoming a new way of life. The speed at which has been my biggest surprise, which I feel.
Mr. Lakshminarayan? Yeah.
I'm yet to be pleasantly surprised on the speed yet. So as I said, I'm very working with this startup company where we have invested. I was truly amazed and surprised at the speed at which they have been. Compared to that, what we have been doing internally, I set them as a benchmark to say this is where you need to go. What I am finding is that mindset to adopt AI is still to be fully internalized by the teams, because when I ask them, why can't you do this with AI, their answer is, I'm trying to make it work first and get the process right, and then I will use AI, which is a wrong way to think about it, right? So I think that is not the AI first thinking. The AI first thinkers would say, let me put AI first and then I'll work. So I'm yet to be pleasantly surprised inside the company. There are pockets where I see that there are mindsets changing and they are able to do things at speed. But AI, the paradigm is very different compared to especially people in the technology field, who have come from traditional thinking of algorithms, right? So, algorithms, we are all used to thinking about, what is the process? I'll write an algorithm to replicate the process. You feed the data, algorithm works on the data and produces the output. That is how most people are trained to do. Whereas AI is very different. AI has already been trained on much of the data, and you just need to give some new data to it and it will come out with an answers. And for many people, I think they have to unlearn their old ways of doing things before they would need to adopt AI. So, I tell them, no, I don't want you to stabilize first and then think about AI. Think AI first. And there I'm yet to be pleasantly surprised, I would say, is the honest answer.
So would you advise it back? Because I have heard the other side also, where people say the speed at what AI is going, for example. Now we have seen enough examples of, cases where agents have gone rogue and have, so balances. Would you want to share something on that part also?
Yeah, I think that is where, I initially started out by saying this platform, this company that we invested in, Commotion, we are advocating the platform, and it's somewhat a philosophy as well, what we call as an AI operating system. If you look at traditionally what an operating system does, like a Windows or any operating system, that operating system makes use of the resources that is available, right? So the CPUs, the storage, the device drivers, and all of that is what an AI operating system uses, because nobody is now doing programming at the level of, how do I use this device driver? And so we are all at a higher level of program. That is what an AI, the operating system does typically in a PC or any place. The reason why AI requires an operating system is because the power of AI, when you implement at scale in enterprises, is not going to come from the models. Models are going to be replaceable, right? Today you'll use one model, and every process we're finding that this model is good at this, another model is going to be good at something else. The models are going to be replaceable. What is unique for each enterprise is their data, as was mentioned before, and also the context in which every organization operates in. They have their own secret sauce. Right? One insurance company is going to be very different. As I said, every state is going to require a different thing. So the context is very different. So today in the AI world, there is a new buzzword called context engineering. So it's gone on from prompt engineering to context engineering. And essentially context is what what is my customer saying about me? What did they tell me last time they interacted with me? What are they saying on the internet? What are they browsing? What are they likely to buy? What kind of complaints have they had? All this context is important, right? And so what the AI operating system we have conceived of is in 3 layers. The first layer is about context. How do you build the context for enterprises at scale so that context can be used to derive their intelligence and can be operated on? That is one. The second is the agentic AI layer to ensure that the agents need orchestration. Orchestration is important, not individual task automation will not give you the benefit. How do I orchestrate across multiple things? Right? And that is where the agentic AI truly brings. So how do I deploy that at scale? The third is the most important layer, which is the trust and governance. Now, to your question on, agent can go rogue and all of those stories are there. So what we have done is the trust and the governance layer will control what an agent can do and can't do. So for example, using this AI operating system, we are deploying a HR worker, for example, to say a HR worker which will assist somebody right from hire to retire. And there are multiple HR agents that would be involved in doing that. And every company will have their own guardrails to say at the time of hiring, you can do this, you cannot do such things, and various such guardrails. These guardrails will not be in any model. These guardrails have to be specified for the enterprise. And our platform will allow enterprises to set those guardrails for the agents to say what an agent can and cannot do for HR worker, for example. Or it could be a insurance sales agent or a claims adjudication, whatever you have to do. Each one of these agents, if you were to think about, they will have to have those guardrails specified, and this trust and the governance layer will capture all these rules on what an agent can and cannot do. And that is what will govern what the agents. So these 3 layers are going to be fundamental. So this is what we call as an AI operating system. Without these fundamental building blocks of how do you build context, how do you build the agent coordination, and how should orchestration happen, and the third is how do I build the guardrails and specify the guardrails through a platform. These 3 things are going to be very crucial for any organization that wants to scale AI in a trustworthy and a proper governable way.
Wonderfully put, sir. Ms. Sindhu?
You asked the question on surprise and an example for that. We all know about the AI summit that was held, but in 2026, right? We've heard, and we had a lot of information that was given to us over the television, and those who attended gave us some very interesting information. But I'm going to talk about 2023, all right? It was 18th April 2023 when I get a call at 11 a.m. I'm sitting in my office at BKC, and I get a call to say that Tim Cook wants to visit your university. All right? Now, what would you normally think when you get a call like that? That it's a big joke, right? So you just say that, don't waste my time, and you put the phone down. And an email comes at the same time from the Apple office to say he'll be there at 3 o'clock. He will want to see something particular that he had talked about, and he will leave at 3:25. We said, should we take this really seriously? Now everything has come in, the names and everything. So I got all my faculty together and got everyone together, and the students were fortunately in the college, and they were all there. And lo and behold, Tim Cook arrived. He was there at 3 p.m. sharp. No fanfare. He walks in with a couple of his people, says, I want to see a student who has created this particular app. What is that app? That app which has got all the craftsmen. We have a design school, right? So all the craftsmen of India have been collated on that app, and he wanted to see how he had done it using an Apple computer. Now, you can't get a better surprise than this. And this is currently, okay, this was much before the AI summit was made. And I think that gave us a lot more confidence that we are on the right track, that we need to take this ahead, and we need to see that students are more and more and more involved into live projects, and either they are upskilling or they are using them is for research projects, or they are doing prototyping. For all of this, we are using a lot of AI. My only question is to these students is that how are you going to be creating knowledge and information for the jobs of the future? And one young student comes up and tells me, why are you asking that question again and again? We are going to create the future for that jobs. And I thought that was
very nicely said, ma'am. Very nicely said. Because I think what you said also shows that the possibilities that exist, and also probably companies today can be created by even one or two, young students like what you may just mentioned. Yeah, that are the possibilities. Yes, Mr.
So when we were on this AI journey, we currently are. So every time we have this cross-functional teams, being set up to handle an end-to-end automation of any one product. There's so much learning that happens across the various functions, as well as when we coordinate with our technology partner, and we get some real surprising results which earlier we didn't know, and we could read our data so much more. So I mean, as we are now partnering with microservices partners from outside, there's so much more learning about our own data, which was always with us, but we didn't know much about it.
Great. So I've got about 7 minutes on my panel. I think it's a good opportunity for us to, have some questions. Is that okay? Okay, fine. If anybody of you has any questions for this eminent panel here, one of us can come to you with a mic. Just raise your hand if you, okay, I see a hand there, please. If you can just introduce yourself also, sir. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I am Sandeep Nerlekar. I run a family business consulting firm. So actually, two questions. One to Dr. Shani and other to the rest of the panelists. I'll start with the rest of the panelists first. So you said that you're investing a lot in AI and AI infra. I want to really understand how much of your corporates are investing in reskilling the existing employees, because obviously there is a general fear that AI will take over a lot of jobs and so on and so forth. And when you're investing into the AI, if the existing employees are not reskilled, obviously that will create a certain amount of disruption. So that's one. And to Dr. Shani.
Sir, if I can, first I have the answer first, so that, any one of you can answer this.
No, and that's very important. We, at least 1,000 people have been certified in the organization on AI. We made these courses available online for anybody to take anytime. And as I said, we are also creating a sense of urgency and, if you will, a fear, if that's the right word to use, as I said, to describe the North Star job description and say, if you have to be relevant, then these are the skills that one needs to acquire, and if you have to get there, what are the courses available in our platforms for one to skill themselves up, so they can do all these courses in their own time, so that they prepare themselves. And asking the questions on, why can't you use AI to do this job, as opposed to, asking for an extra headcount, or have you thought about doing this more efficiently using AI? So one is through leadership questioning and challenges to say that the people have to use, and second is to give them the tools to equip themselves. So we are taking the horses to the pond, then they have to drink it.
Yep.
Yeah, and my follow-up question to Dr. Shahani. You're doing a lot of good work with the younger crowd on getting them skilled. What are you doing different so that the older crowd who doesn't get reskilled are not thrown out of the jobs? Which means what you're doing different for the existing employees which work with corporates for them to get reskilled.
So you're asking me what we're doing for the students who graduate and go
No,
to the...
I'm asking you what you're doing
for the
differently for the existing employees who are caught in probably they had 20, 25 years of experience or 10 years experience, but they're not caught on to the current trend of AI, and they need to because corporates are investing in it.
I agree. That is for the corporates to come and approach us, and we'd be very happy to do skilling for them because I think one of the things that we do and we are focusing on first is technology, because I think that technology leads the way. Second is human skills, because AI may be there all the time, but who's going to use AI? And you will need human skills. You will need, especially in education, you will need EI, emotional intelligence also, along with AI. And the third thing is, of course, we want to see that as much as, my thing is I would like to teach the young students who join corporates or the corporates that how do you use AI responsibly? I think that is one of the most important things. Responsible usage of AI.
So I think, okay, can I have a mic?
Can
here,
I
please?
just add one more to that question? See, I think the reason why I said that, we can take the horses to the pond and they have to, we have to create a sense of urgency within the employee base. And I tell this often within our own company to say the half-life of skills is rapidly diminishing, right? So when I started my career in IT, I could have learned one programming language and survived for 10 years. And now it's diminishing to 4 or 5 years. With AI, the world of AI and the technology there is moving so rapidly that the half-life of the skills that you acquire is going to diminish very, very rapidly. So therefore, it is important that people realize this and with a sense of urgency to start to learn about AI. That is true for individuals in an organization. As much it is true for the enterprise itself, which is why I say the statement that if you don't prepare yourself, the next 5 years, in the next 50 years, you will not be there. I think that level of paranoia needs to exist for us to positively use AI and not allow the AI world to take us along and go past us.
But the effect of AI on manufacturing.
Sir, in the interest of time, I have another question. I mean, you can take this off, please, sir. Sorry. Yeah. Can I have a mic for this gentleman?
Sir, I am Pallama Patra. I have been throughout in the banking sector. I am now retired. So I worked in Central Bank, State Bank of India up to the level of Deputy Managing Director. I was MD in Central Bank of India. And I just retired from RCL, which is an asset reconstruction company, as the MD and CEO. This is a question to Mr. Lakshminarayan. Sir, you are right that AI first. But with my experience of 43 years in this financial services sector, what we have seen is if the process is not there and something new is basically implemented, especially in the technology side, the risk of something going awry is very high. Like in case of AI, what I understand, I am not a technology person. We are trying to do in also basically in the call center. How suppose there is a program for restructuring of the unsecured loans where the scheme is defined, and the scheme is basically through the outbound call told to the customers how to do it. But the question is, the richness of data is must, so that the bots can basically communicate to them. Now, for the richness of the data, whether that richness of data is available in that particular organization, or they have to basically take that the data from elsewhere. If the data is to be taken from elsewhere, or the information is to be taken from elsewhere to make the AI more effective, how compatible is that particular information and data? That is becoming a challenge. Same thing is using the data analytics through the AI to basically arrive at, in case of the retail financing, it becomes very difficult for individual to work out the loan component, right?
Yeah.
So what I feel, I may sound to be very, very conservative because of my age, but don't you think that the process is more important?
Yeah, no, I think I talked about it. That's precisely the reason why I say an AI operating system is required. So AI cannot be deployed in an ad hoc fashion, right? So people are doing that in an ad hoc fashion to say, I will put some voice AI with some model for doing some outbound calling. In my opinion, that will not scale. And voice AI also tends to hallucinate. But if you deploy a proper system, and that is what is called as a context layer, that context layer will bring the data together from multiple places and give that context to AI, so that when the outbound voice AI call is made, that has all the context. And so we can talk more at length later on. That is why I'm saying that an approach of implementing AI in a project by project fashion will not allow enterprises to scale, right? Because you need that context, you need the data that you talked about. And this past dream, as I said, I've been in the IT industry for 43 years, and the data warehouses and the data lakes and all of that people talked about data fabric. Data fabric is important, but what is missing there is the context. Context graph means that I need to know, how we are supposed to do the job, and that is all the context of the individual, the context of the enterprise. That needs to be captured in the context layer. Without that, AI will not function very effectively.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. Maybe one thing that for you, maybe you said that maybe you are conservative at this age, and at this stage of your career, sitting here in this at this time, clearly shows that you are forward-looking, not conservative. Another thing which I will like to add to this, you said that collecting data from somewhere and putting it and this thing. See, sector to sector this differs. How AI plays a very important role in the manufacturing sector now is that we all know that any product which is being manufactured in the manufacturing industry, a line which is producing, there is a product code, which whether it is SAP or Oracle, anywhere. So what machine now, AI, ML, which we all know, artificial intelligence and machine learning, is very, very important now to provide the best to the consumer. Like a same product code, the machine, this data AI, what it is doing is that it is making the machine to learn the same product made in last, say, 180 days, 100 times, which is the best specification which the machine has produced. Out of that, for the same product code, ultimately machine learns and it starts picking up on its own to deliver the best. There is a tolerance which is there. Within that, what is the best which it has produced. So artificial intelligence has been there. It used to be that data used to be brought in and fed and then make the machine learn. It is now AI has enabled it to learn on its own and deliver the best.
Okay, I can take one last question in the interest of time. If anybody has any question? There are no questions. Okay, there's one, I can see, one last question.
My question is to Mr. Mahindra. I'm Dharmesh Mahajan, CTO SR Future Energy. You talked about 25 plants which are giving you data and predictive maintenance and various other inputs. That means you are able to see the dashboard every morning. Now, last night, just one simple example, Iran hacked into Israel's railway lines, right? And the stations, everything got struck. And that is, we are running second biggest refinery in the UK and various other plants. This is something where we see a challenge because Mr. Lakshmi also talked about 3 layers. One of that was trust and governance, but the security of the data. That how you are dealing with that security of the data, that you are not getting hacked or someone cannot take you on a ransom.
Very important, not just that we have now multiple locations, we have faced these kind of situations. I'll tell you, we operate one of the largest hydro power plant in the sector, which is very, very close to the China border. And in 2019, we faced the first hacking attempt, and it was from across the border, which we all were able to, wherein. So we have learned, we have definitely the walls which are there, we have increased, and this is a continuous process at the JSW group level also, in terms of the data privacy, the security, and we have the most advanced. I am not expert in this line. Expert is maybe a much better expert is sitting in Mr. Lakshminarayan. He will be able to answer. But yes, this is a key, and we have a dedicated department at the group level, at the organization level, with the best of the experts, and that is very important. I'll just tell you one very recent thing. What we keep doing is scanning the environment physically also, not only just electronically, but the kind of the findings we get, which we cannot assume knowingly, unknowingly, whether it is. So we keep doing these kind of things on a very, very periodic basis we have. But data security is a key for us, because this is a national asset, the data in terms of related to power, and it is related to the security also of any such thing, especially in our sector, in plant, anything happens, it can directly impact the grid. And electricity grid collapse we have experienced maybe years back, but now we cannot afford with this size of economy. So those things are very important and integral for us.
So unfortunately, my time is up. This discussion can go on and on, but I think just to borrow the word of a sentence from Mr. Lakshminarayan and say, only the paranoid, that's what you said, right? I think we all need to have a sense of paranoia in terms of taking AI in the positive sense, probably reskill and reskill. And I think different sets of industries, legacy, education, service provider, energy, all national level initiatives. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a wonderful perspective. Can I ask you to pose for a group photograph, please?
A round of applause for our distinguished CEOs. Imagine if 4 of them are sitting here, and in the playbook we have nearly 50 CEOs. So it's really powerful dialogue. After they finish their group photos, I would request Mr. Sudhanshu Vats, our Senior Vice President and Managing Director, Pidilite Industries, to present our distinguished panel with a token of appreciation. Let's give them a huge round of applause. For the number of people sitting in the hall, I think the claps are a little bit less. So, right? Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, gentlemen.